Welcome to the Evangelism Podcast. I'm Daniel King, and I'm excited about telling people about Jesus. And today I have a very special guest with me, Pastor Aaron Antillon. He is an expert in DISC, D-I-S-C. He's a master trainer and coach of the DISC model of human behavior. It's a way of looking at different personality types. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Daniel. I am excited because this is one of the things that I am so passionate about talking about.
Now today we're going to talk about how to use DISC in order to witness to people and to lead people to Jesus. You know, different personality types have a different way that you have to approach them.
Sure.
And so every single person has these different personality types, and what techniques work with one person may not work with another person. And so by understanding human behavior and understanding human personality, you can be better at interacting with people, reaching them, ultimately leading them to Jesus. So let's begin, Aaron, by talking about DISC. What is DISC?
Well, DISC is a measurement tool that measures individuals' behavior. You know, we all have different capacities for different things. We're wired a little bit different. Some of us are a little bit more outgoing. When we wake up in the morning, the natural wiring on the inside of us is that we have an inward motor. And it sounds like this. You and I are wired that way. We're fast-paced. While there's others that are wired that they're more reserved. Their inward motor sounds like this. And when they get excited, it'll peak. But then it comes back to a level. Now, you know, one is not better than the other. They're just different. And when we look to effectively connect with others, the first thing that we identify is the individual that we're looking to connect with. Are they more outgoing or are they more reserved? So outgoing individuals have big gestures. They talk fast. They move very quickly. While those that are more reserved are a little bit more slower paced.
And here I am, I'm thinking, come on, Aaron, let's get to the point, let's go. Why are you going so slow? But you're trying to connect with different personalities.
With different personalities. So the first identifier is the individual that we're looking to connect with, more outgoing or more reserved. I realize that in any situation, it depends on the environment, but we're looking for the best version of the individual. The natural, best, and highest use. The second indicator that we identify is the individual that we're looking to connect with more task-oriented or more people-oriented? That's a bigger bent to where disconnect occurs. You see, Daniel, if I'm more reserved and you're more outgoing, the only thing that you need to do in order to connect with me is to slow it down. And I would need to speed it up. That isn't that big of a deal. It's said that 10 to 20% of conflict occurs between those that are outgoing and those that are more reserved. Not that big of a deal. But the big disconnect occurs between those that are more task-oriented, that their mindset is about function, process, procedure.
Getting things done.
Getting things done.
They don't care if they steamroller over people as long as the task is completed.
You and I know leaders that fits their personality style. They're wired that way. You and I have the natural wiring that we're wired that way. I was just sharing with you that I was on a call with a leading expert in this field, and on my call, he's wired to where he's more people-oriented, touchy-feely relationships, caring, sharing. And I called him and I got straight to the point. Let's talk about the result that we want to get. And he asked me this question, Aaron, has anybody ever told you, you've hurt my thinking? I was like, no, that's ridiculous. Who would ever say that? He goes, what do they typically say? They typically say, you've hurt my feelings. And so here's the thing, Daniel. Everyone communicates, but very few people connect. The goal of communication is not to get your point across. The goal of communication is to effectively connect with the individual. If I'm more task-oriented and driven to where I'm more high-tech, and if you're more people-oriented to where it's more high-touch, I have to make necessary shifts in order to effectively connect with you. So the first indicator that we identify is the individual more outgoing or reserved? The second one is, are they more task-oriented or people-oriented? If you were to draw a circle, and if you were to divide the circle in half horizontally, on the top of your circle you would write outgoing. On the bottom of your circle you would write reserved. Then if you were to divide the circle again in the middle vertically, on the left-hand side of the circle you would put task. On the right hand you would put people. So now we have 4 quadrants. You see the picture? Are you getting the picture?
Yeah.
So we have the upper left-hand quadrant of being outgoing and task-oriented. We have the upper right-hand quadrant being outgoing and people-oriented. We have the bottom right quadrant as reserved and people-oriented. Is this clear?
Yeah.
And then the bottom left part of the quadrant as reserved and task-oriented. You know, in any situation, in any circumstance, we really are a blend of all 4 styles. But let me explain what these 4 styles
before
look like.
we get into explaining, the explaining each of these different styles,
sure.
Let's talk a little bit about like how has this impacted you? Because before we say
Yes.
this is what this is, let's see how this impacted you and how this changed your life.
That's great. Thank you for bringing me back into this perspective, and because this is a great story. Because you and I have known each other for many years. You've known me.
We've been good friends.
You've known me whenever I was in this place of discontentment. You and I had conversations about this, to where I did not understand why I was not functioning in my best and highest use. But I'm pastoring a church. I felt I was being obedient to God, but yet I had very minimal effectiveness in pastoring a church, and I have high effectiveness in leading and developing leaders and doing business. And so at the age of 40, on my 40th birthday, I woke up with that heart of discontentment, and I walk over into our bathroom mirror, and I look at myself in the mirror, and I talk to myself. You know, Daniel, I truly believe that self-talk can be your greatest asset or your greatest weapon. What is it that you're saying to yourself? I believe that if you want to change your life, you change what it is that you say. I believe that if you really want to change your life, you change what it is that you say to yourself. So I asked myself this question, and for the first time, I'm really diving into a deep place of reflection. Up until that moment, I had been running from that place of reflection, probably scared of what it is that I would see. But I asked myself this question. I said it like this: Aaron, if you continue going down the same path, at the same pace, will you arrive at your desired destination? And with tears immediately streaming down my face, I answered myself and I said no. But I knew that I had to do something different in order to get different results. You know, Daniel, I wasn't involved in sin, unconfessed sin. I wasn't cheating on my wife. I wasn't stealing from the church. I wasn't doing things, taking drugs, drinking, any of those things that we would think that would bring that discontentment. There was a gap between where it was that I was presently at, and where it was that I felt that God truly had designed and destined for me to go. I did not know how to bridge that gap. I've had spiritual leaders that would say, well, weren't you praying? I was praying every day. I was even praying in the Spirit every day. And I'm not discounting the power of prayer and praying in the Spirit. I was in the Word and confessing the Word. I was doing all that I knew to do. And I was standing on God's promises, but there was still that discontent. And that's whenever I came into alignment with the DISC model of human behavior that really taught me a lot about myself. You know, I believe that the highest level of leadership is not a position or a title. I believe that the highest level of leadership is self-leadership. And I began to dive in deep into the DISC model in order to really understand myself.
So you began to understand what was going on with your personality, and then that helped you to understand other people's personalities and how to use your personality in the best way to interact with others.
Honestly, I wasn't even concerned so much about others at that point.
It's just understanding yourself.
I was trying to really discover myself. You know, it said that the greatest day in a person's life is whenever they're born. The second greatest day is whenever they discover why. I was trying to discover who Aaron is. What is my true best and highest use? And it came through the discovery of the DISC model. And I began to learn why I'm wired and why I think and why I feel the way that I do. And it all made sense. I remember I took an assessment, Daniel, and the assessment was so accurate, it was scary.
Okay, so let's jump into what each of these things, the DISC, stand for.
Yes.
And then let's talk about your personality type and my personality type. And so you explained this 4 quadrants.
Yes.
And so tell us what each of these quadrants feel like, people that are in each quadrant.
Okay. Now here's the thing. DISC is not a model to bottle cap anybody. It's not a model to put an excuse or a crutch. It's an empowerment. It's to empower you to effectively lead yourself and to lead others.
And nothing's wrong with one personality type or another personality type. Every different type has its strengths and its weaknesses. And so with whatever your personality is, you can have great strengths. And of course, every personality type has its weaknesses too. But by understanding it, you can overcome some of the weaknesses and operate in your strengths.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the outgoing, task-oriented individual, that is what we call the dominant style. That's the D.
So the D is the outgoing, task-oriented person who wants to get things done.
Yes. So the D stands for dominant. Now, all 4 personality styles all have a blind spot. And the blind spot for the dominant personality style is that they can be defiant. Daniel, you and I have a lot of D in us. Have you ever, can you attest to that? That in times of pressing?
Yeah. I mean, I have a very strong leadership personality. And when my wife Jessica and I were engaged to be married, we did counseling with Pastor Greg Frazier in Morinville, Alberta, up in Canada. And he was counseling us, and he said, as part of your counseling, I want you to both take the DISC personality test. So both me and Jessica, we went through the DISC, and I came out high D, which is very dominant. And what's interesting is my wife also has high D. Usually opposites attract, but in our case, we were attracted to each other because we liked what we saw in each other. And so I'm very leadership oriented. My wife Jessica is very leadership oriented. And it's great in some ways because as long as we are headed in the same direction, we can take over the world.
Right.
Like we can accomplish big things for God. We can do big crusades. We can raise a lot of money. Like we are task oriented. We're like, get stuff done. But if we're headbutting, if we're coming at each other, man,
like
it's fireworks and yeah, it's like two rams coming together, and then we don't get anything done. Because I'm strong and she's strong, and it just butts heads. And so we have to work on that in our marriage. But having that understanding, even before we got married, helped us to understand one another's personalities. And so both of us have similar strengths, but we also have similar weaknesses too.
Sure.
Like the way we're wired, we're not super good at like counseling people through problems. Like evangelists typically aren't. Evangelists are like you're having problems with drugs. Well, just stop it. Just don't do it. Don't go. Whereas like someone who's more pastoral would say, "Oh, tell me about it. How did this happen? What can we?" And they're very soft and calm. And evangelists tend to be like, slap you upside the back of the head and say, "Get going. I don't care how you feel. Let's go
and sin no more."
Yeah. Okay. So D is dominant. Talk about I.
Well, let me share a couple of strengths with the D.
Yeah.
Some of the strengths are D's are strong-willed. Just like what you said, we're determined.
Mm-hmm.
We're independent. We're optimistic. So typically, D's use these strengths, but here's a key point here. A key concept is that any strength pushed to an extreme becomes a weakness. That's why I had said the blind spot for the dominant style can be that they can be defiant. It's a strength that's pushed to an extreme. But let's move on. The outgoing, people-oriented individual, do you see that within your own style? Can you attest to that?
Yeah, I think...
Because I see that you're thinking through this.
Yeah, I'm thinking through it. Let's keep going.
Okay. So the outgoing, people-oriented, the word that describes the outgoing, people-oriented individual is that they're inspiring. These individuals are the life of the party. Now, each of the four personality styles, we all have basic needs. And the basic needs are different for each of the four. Whenever you're looking to motivate, whenever you're looking to empower each of the four, there's different things that you need. The outgoing task or the dominant, they need challenges, choices, and control. Maybe you have family members, listener. Maybe you have family members that they're dominant personality styles. And you're telling them, come on, you have to get it done. You have to do it my way. See, if you don't give them challenges, if you don't give them choices, if you don't give them control, then there's going to be a continual butting of the heads. Well, what if these dominant individuals in my family are my children? I'll give you an example. I'm going back to the dominant just because I want to share this story. My daughter, Ashlyn, that you've known since she was maybe 2 years old. Ashlyn's a dominant personality style. She's a lot like me. So much like me, it's scary. And so Ashlyn would always have an issue going to bed. And I would say, Ashlyn, you have to be in bed by 10 o'clock. Your lights have to be out. So she would have her lights out, but she would make it clear she's not asleep. She would say going to sleep before 11 is for the weak. She would say that even whenever she was a little girl, 5, 6 years old, she would say, I don't take naps. That's for the weak. And so when I learned about the model of human behavior and I learned that dominant individuals, that they need challenges, choices, and control, I changed my language with her. And I said, Ashlyn, you can go to sleep whatever time that you want, as long as it is before 9 o'clock. I'm giving her a choice. Whatever time it is you want to go to sleep. She's sharp. She's not dumb. But she said, okay. And now she's turning in, and now because it's her choice at what time. Why? Whenever you give dominant individuals challenges, choices, and control, that's a fuel. That's a basic need. Just like fish need water and we human beings need air. They need challenges, choices, and control. So I had to say that going back to the dominant. But now for the inspiring individuals, they're the life of the party.
Yeah.
They're the life of the party. They're the party starters. You know what their basic needs are? Approval, recognition, popularity. If you have these individuals on your team, maybe in your church, maybe a part of your evangelism outreach team, and you would say, well, these individuals do not focus on the details. It's because they're not wired to focus on the details. They're wired to be the party starters. They're wired to keep everything going and keeping it fun. So empower them on your team to do those particular roles. What do you think? How do you feel about that, Daniel?
Yeah, an evangelism team definitely needs that inspiring personality type because they can gather people together. The evangelist wants to go out and gather as many people together. And so usually I think if you can have someone who's a D who's kind of leading the group and getting everything going, but then you get some eyes out there to say, hey, let's gather up everybody, let's have a party, let's have a block party, let's do something. And so can really be good teamwork between people who have the vision, but then you need those people that are inspiring and really want to go out and relate to people.
You know, their strengths, the strengths of these individuals is that they're friendly, they're compassionate, they're talkative, they're enthusiastic. They make everything look bigger and better than what it really is. If you need your vision to be talked up, you share your vision with the inspiring style because they're going to really talk up your vision. But you know what can be the blind spot for these individuals?
That party never stops.
Well, they could be illogical. Exactly. That the party never stops.
They're joking around when someone's trying to be serious.
They're at the altar and the Spirit of God is moving there at the altar and they're all here joking around and goofing off. And that's the illogical part. But an empowering leader understands how to effectively empower others to operate in their best and their highest use. Under control, they're optimistic. Out of control, they're unrealistic. Under control, they're spontaneous. But out of control, they're impulsive. What we really need in whatever style is our predominant style is that we need balance. Now realize this, we are a blend of all four personality styles based on whatever the demand is. But what we're talking about at this point is our best and our highest use, the way that we're naturally wired. Because if you and I were to go to the game tonight, we're probably going to be in the role of an I. Hey, let's just have fun. Let's enjoy life. We may not even talk about ministry and evangelism. We probably will, but we're going to talk about it while we're having a lot of fun. Why? Because that's the right environment. But in the best flow, in the best wiring, the inspiring style is involved, is optimistic, is persuasive. They're the party starters for your team, even for your family. What do you think? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, we all love eyes. All right, let's talk about S, the supportive part of this model of human behavior. What does an S do and how do they act?
Okay, now I'm going to change my tone.
Okay.
On the outgoing, because that's the D's and the I's, they're fast-paced, they're upbeat.
Yeah.
On the S and the C, they're the reserve style. So I'm going to change my tone. Speak a little bit softer.
Why are you speaking softer?
Because that's what best connects with the supportive style.
So S stands for supportive.
Supportive. They're reserved and they're people-oriented. Another word that S stands for is sweet. Here's another one. Serve. Stable, secure. Their strengths are that they can remain calm even under pressure. They're dependable. They're very easygoing. They're trustworthy. If we're talking about ministry, I like to say it like this. The D's are the hands of the ministry. The I's are the mouth of the ministry. The S's are the hearts of the ministry. And the C's are the feet.
Okay, on the S's, what are some of the weaknesses?
The weaknesses is that they can lack initiative. Under control, they're relaxed, but out of control, they can lack initiative.
So they don't go out and start something themselves.
They don't start something themselves.
But they're willing to follow someone who...
They're willing to support a vision. And they're willing to support a vision long term. As evangelists that are looking to build supporters and draw in supporters, these are the soft-spoken, heart-to-heart kind of talks that you'll have with these individuals. And you would need to slow down your pace and talk one-on-one versus in the crowd and talking to them. Because they're soft-hearted when they're under control. But when they're out of control, they can be easily manipulated. Under control, they're great listeners. But out of control, they'll stop communicating. Under control, they're systematic, but out of control, they can be slow. And I say the same thing. What we really need is balance. What we really need is balance. The blind spot in this particular personality style is that they could be susceptible. They have a really tough time saying no. You know why? Because they have such a big heart. Because they do not want to offend anyone. You know, Daniel, I truly believe this. Everyone communicates, but very few people connect. If you were to raise your voice and say, I want this done and I want this done now, you can speak to me that way and I'll get up and I'll start moving and I'll start looking and finding a way to get it done. But if you speak like that to a supportive style, what's going to happen is that they're going to fold up.
I've done that before. I've talked the wrong way to people and they've gotten very offended.
And you know, when I was pastoring...
And I was like, why? We're trying to get it done. We're trying to get the task done.
When I was
why are you upset at me?
I was sharing this with you. When I was pastoring, one of the things that I would say is, we're moving forward with or without you.
And people were like, okay, you're going without me. And then you're wondering, where are all the people?
And I'm like, Lord, where are the people? Why did you send me uncommitted people? They're not uncommitted. I was not effectively connecting with them. And I missed it. I missed it. I believe that there's well-meaning, God-called, God-anointed ministry leaders that have missed the connection, that have missed connecting with other leaders. You and I know some. You and I have been connected with others.
Yeah. And
they've hurt the people that God called to their ministry.
Unintentionally.
With great intentions.
But still not understanding how different personality types work. It just causes offense sometimes. All right, let's go to the last one, the C personality. What does C stand for?
Well, the C stands for cautious. The cautious style.
Be careful.
Be careful. Measure twice, cut once. The cautious style is both reserved and task-oriented. They're cautious. Another word that describes the C style is that they're competent. We see a lot of attorneys, a lot of doctors. You know, doctors have been accused for having issues with their bedside manners. Well, they didn't even ask me, how's the family doing? How would you like it if the doctor engages in so much conversation that he says, now what hip are we replacing? Are we taking out your heart or your lung or your kidney? Because he's engaged in conversation. He's focused on the task, and he wants to be reserved, and he wants to measure twice, cut once, to make sure that it's done accurately, specifically. The blind spot for the cautious style is that they could be cold. Let me share with you the strengths, because I like to focus on the positive side. The strengths is that they're very gifted. They're very analytical. They're sensitive. They're perfectionists. They deal with a high level of excellence. Under control, they're very orderly, but out of control, they can be compulsive. Under control, and I like this, they're logical, but out of control, they can be critical. Ouch. Under control, they're teachable, but out of control, they can be easily offended. Remember this, and I go back to it. What we really need is balance. In whatever personality style is our predominant style, what we need is to remain more under control than out of control. One of my big discoveries, one of the big aha moments, was whenever I identified that I had been living the majority of my life out of control. And then I began to think through the people, starting with my own wife and my own children, and those that I love the most, that I trust the most, and that I'm spending the majority of my time with, how I had unintentionally hurt them. And I made a commitment to the Lord, and I said, Lord, from this point forward, I'm taking a deep dive, and I'm going to better Aaron, whether anybody else reciprocates. And even, I wasn't looking for people to meet me halfway. I said, I'm going all in, whether it's reciprocated or not. Because I want my words to bring forth healing. I want my words to bring forth restoration. I want my words to bring forth hope. Much easier said than done, but it had to come through having a system. And I call this my system for success. Having a system that has enabled me. Success, you know, Daniel, from my point of view, says success is not a number. It's not a place. It's not a title. Success in my world is arriving at my desired destination, fulfilling the purpose that God called me to, operating on all cylinders, living in my best and highest use. And I said, know what? I'm going to go all in. You know what? Quite frankly, it took my wife probably about 2 years to believe it. Because of all the years. Somebody just asked me, my wife and I just celebrated 24 years of marriage last month. And they asked, how long have y'all been married? Well, we've been happily married about 16, 17 years. What? I'm sorry, we've been happily married about 6 or 7 years. We've been married, though, 24 years. Because I had missed that. She was the opposite. She is the opposite style than I. And I had spent all those years hurting the one that God had given to me to complete me.
What personality type is your wife?
A CS. And I'm a DI.
So explain that. People have a one quadrant that they are strongest in, and then a secondary.
A lot of times there is. The only way to really identify, if there are some people that there even such thing as a level blend.
Mm-hmm.
That
they've got some of everything.
That they're right in the middle with everything.
So the other day, I told you that I was a DI. Mm-hmm. And I seem to remember when I took the test that's what I was. But you immediately said, no, Daniel, I think you're a DC.
Yes.
And it's because I'm meticulous. I like giving lists. Like I'm very studious. So that's the DC. And I think what happened is that I wish I was an I. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I try to fake being an I, but my real personality is the DC.
Yes. And I would agree with you on that. Because even whenever we're talking about party starting and things like that and moving in that area, you're like, no, we're not going that way.
Let's accomplish something.
Let's accomplish the task. Let's get it done. And see, and that's where
you're gonna laugh. I didn't even do a Super Bowl party this year. I didn't even go to a Super Bowl party.
Wow.
I was like, I got something I gotta do that night.
Well, I had been upset, of course, because of the Cowboys' loss, and throughout the whole playoff season, I'm like, I'm not going to any Super Bowl party. I'm not even going to watch it. But of course, I had to go to Wild Wings, and I had to be in the middle of all the hoopla to watch the Super Bowl because of my high I. I didn't care who won. I was upset.
So, what did you say your wife was? She's
a CS.
Okay, so how does someone like you, a DI, relate to a CS?
It takes a lot of intention in understanding the model. That's more than a segment. That's a year of teaching and coaching and training. That's a packed question there.
Let's talk about how to reach people that have these different personality traits. So, as evangelists, we are called to be fishers of men.
Yes.
And for every different type of fish, there is a different bait or lure that would be used. So if you're going ocean fishing, you're going to use a different bait than if you're in a stream fishing for a salmon or something. And so you want to use the appropriate bait to reach different personality styles. And that can relate to how you share stories in your sermons. It can relate to the speed that you preach in. It can relate to whether you're giving personal anecdotes or giving statistics. Like, different ways of communication help to connect with different personality types. And even some people might need more of the one-on-one touch than being in an audience. And so let's talk about these four different personality types. Like, how would you reach someone who is a dominant personality, a D-type personality, who's driven? Maybe it's a businessman who is highly accomplished. They make lots of money. You go into their office, they say, you have 3 minutes with me. What do you want to say? How would you communicate with them about Jesus in that 3 minutes?
Okay, here's a couple of things. With the dominant style, what they want from you is they want you to be brief, be brilliant, be to the point, and be gone. You said the 3 minutes, you hit it right on target. But here's what it is that they want most of all. They want results. Tell me how your program, tell me what you have to offer is going to get me results. And what are those results? The question that they want answered is what? You can write that down. If you're listening, you can write that down. The question that they want answered is what? And what's the
benefit? What do I get out of it?
What are the results? What is the results that I'm going to get from this? When you're selling to them, when you're asking them to marry you, what's the benefit? What's the result?
And the evangelist is God's salesperson.
It's God's salesperson.
So we are selling. We're selling Jesus.
We're selling Jesus. Tell people what the result is. The peace of mind, the joy unspeakable and full of glory, the eternal ticket to heaven. That's the result. The inspiring style, they want recognition. So even whenever you're selling Jesus to them, one of the things that it would be okay to do is to name drop. You just got through leading their best friend or their spouse to the Lord. One of the terms
might be really powerful.
A testimony of someone that they admire, a testimony of Kanye would be a great example. You're in a sense name dropping. One of the things that I use is whenever I'm selling, whenever I'm connecting, I use this term, just like you. I just sold this product to a leader just like you. I just led this person to Jesus, and know what? They remind me of someone just like you. Just like you is a phrase that is a great connection with them. Why? Because they want to do what is popular. Their need is the recognition, the approval, and the popularity. They're going to go by the popularity vote. Because remember, it's all about the people. It's all about the people.
They want to be part of something.
They want to be a part of
They
something.
want to see
something that's bigger than them. And so that's the big thing, the great party. Maybe even whenever you come to Jesus, all of heaven is rejoicing. There's a party going on, and they're celebrating you today. That's a big thing that resonates. Realize it doesn't have to resonate with you, but it resonates with them. Now the S, it's all about the one-on-one relationship. It's all about the relationship. And you don't have to do anything boisterous, anything flamboyant. But the sincerity and the relationship, they're going to be able to spot if you're a phony or not.
So
you connect with them.
Sincerity.
With that
it's
sincerity.
It's not the flashy presentation that they like.
Right.
It's someone who is real with them.
Right.
The genuineness.
And even if you're doing a crusade, and if it's geared towards a particular style, a particular personality style, you identify what is that need of the particular style, and you gear and you set your presentation up to connect with that particular style.
Yeah, I think if you're preaching a sermon, it might be worthwhile to go through the sermon, and you could even highlight different areas of your notes with the different colors that correspond to these different things.
Yes.
Say, okay, this part of the sermon is going to connect with dominant people.
This
story is that I'm going to share is really going to connect with people who are eyes that want inspiration. And then I'm going to slow down here, and I'm going to look people in the eyes, and I'm going to give them some of the genuine testimony from my heart to connect with the S. And then I'm going to give some facts and figures so that the C's can think through it and make sure that it all makes sense.
Exactly.
And you can structure your sermon in such a way that you can relate to different people. Because I think one of the mistakes people do, they start by preaching sermons that would best reach their personality type. But not everyone in the audience is going to be your personality type. You're going to have different types of people. And so you have to intentionally think, how am I going to reach this type of person? Or how am I going to reach that type of person?
Let me give you a great stat. Because this would be relevant. The D's represent about 10% of the population. For you C's, you're going to love this stat. The I's represent 20 to 30%. So realize the D's and I's are your outgoing style. So if you're outgoing, if you're fast-paced, if your presentation is loud, boisterous, flamboyant, all the pyrotechnics and all that, you're only reaching about 40% at max of the outgoing individuals, because the S's and the C's are not going to connect with that. Now the S's represent about 35% of the population. And the C's, because of course it has to be right, they represent 25% of the population. So you see that the reserve represents 60% and the outgoing represent 40%. So if you're to gear your presentation to where you don't know who's in the general audience, if you're to slow your presentation down, speak a little bit softer, make more eye contact, nice gestures and soft smiles very intentionally, you're probably going to connect with the larger percentage of the population that's in your audience. You and I were talking yesterday, and I was telling you just about some techniques whenever I'm walking through the crowd and I'm speaking, that whenever I'm in the front of the auditorium, because we would say that those that are more outgoing are probably racing to be in the front. I'm a little bit more animated, and my gestures are bigger, my smiles are bigger, I even do some touches. But as I make my way towards the back of the room, I soften my tone.
Because they're sitting in the back because they don't really want someone to come and touch them.
They don't. They don't. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
It's not that they're saved. Look at, we would say, what would we say that the back row is reserved for who?
The cool kids.
for those that are not interested, or those that not
sure.
Maybe it's those that are more reserved. My wife is more reserved. When we go to church, I like sitting in the front. But because I know that if I sit in the front, she isn't going to follow me, I sit more closer to the back. But shouldn't she follow me? I'm the man, I'm the husband, I'm the leader of the home. Absolutely I am. But I'm looking to effectively connect with her. So let me make that necessary adjustment. What do you think? How do you feel?
So, talk to me a little bit more about the C personality. You said that D's ask what, I's look for recognition, S's look for relation. They ask who. So I's ask who. Yes. What do S's ask for?
Look at this. How?
Okay.
How can I best serve you?
See, I'm asking because, I want all my ducks in a row. That's the C coming out. I think.
Absolutely.
What does C's ask?
Why do you ask that question, Daniel?
Do they ask why?
Why do you ask?
Because got some C in me.
C's ask why. Daniel, I used to, even in conversations that you and I would have, you would ask me why. Why are you thinking this way?
I have a curiosity in my personality to want to figure things out and to understand what is going on. And
the way that I would translate it, look at this. The way that I would translate it is, he's trying to trap me. He's trying to highlight my inadequacies. He's trying to identify that I did not properly or effectively research this. But you were asking me why in order to get to the root cause, so that way you could help bring some solutions. And seeing that's where everyone communicates, but few connect. And there was a disconnect there. And I would wonder, why is Daniel challenging me like that? And you're like, thinking, I'm not challenging you.
And that wasn't my intention at all.
I'm trying to help you.
But in your personality type, it was interpreted that way. All right, so D's ask what, I's ask who, S's ask how, and C's ask why.
They ask why. Not why in order to trap you, but when they're under control, why? So that way they have the clarity on how they can best serve.
That's awesome.
And help take the organization to a next level of excellence.
I feel like you could discuss all of these different types for hours on end. And in fact, you have several training courses where you teach people how to understand DISC and how to understand themselves and how to use it to relate to others. You're actually a master trainer and coach in the DISC model of human behavior. And you have a bunch of resources available for people who want to understand DISC better. And you wrote one resource on how to win with people by using DISC. And you're willing to give that free to our listeners today?
It's a free gift on our website.
Awesome. And so what's your website and how can someone get this extremely valuable resource, how to win with people by using DISC?
Just go to legacyleadership.academy. Legacyleadership.academy. And at the very top you'll see an area that says free gift, and just click on that link and just put in your name and your email address and you'll get an immediate download of that resource.
And on your website you have information about how to receive additional training.
Yes.
In this.
We have certifications. We have in-person events at some of the nicest resorts in America. And so our next training is in Destin, Florida. We're going to go on a missions trip to the Wyndham Emerald Grand on April 3rd through the 6th at the Wyndham Emerald Grand in Destin. And we're going to just go in and learn more about the model of human behavior and how we can serve others and empower leaders while we're there on the beach just loving Jesus and loving each other.
That's awesome. It sounds like it would be a load of fun. All right, well, thank you so much for being on the Evangelism Podcast. I think this information is extremely valuable for evangelists to think about and how they're communicating to these different personality types and styles of communication. So, Aaron, you're a good friend. I appreciate you. This was so valuable, so much extremely valuable content. Thank you for being on the Evangelism Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Daniel King is on a mission to save 1 million souls a year, but he can't do it alone. Would you consider sowing a financial seed today? To give, please visit www.kingministries.com.